With Scream 3 being the one chapter in the franchise where the killer worked entirely on their own, there has been speculations on whether or not they could have an accomplice, and considering the production starting draft did include a second Ghostface reveal. A lot of footage was seen in the finished movie was filmed to reflect the intended script, so in this video we're going to be breaking down all the appearances of Ghostface in Scream 3 to see where it could have been the second killer and which that would have been. Now, before we get into the meat of this, I wanted to tell you I had no intention of making a Scream 3 which Ghostface killed who, and I did find out that there was a video to be made here since Aaron Kruger, original Scream 3 script, excuse me, did include a second Ghostface killer in the character of Angelina Tyler. Many scenes had already been filmed that corresponded with this detail, and because of the production began with the crew and the actress Emily Mortimer under the impression that she would be Roman's accomplice and girlfriend there. There's no way of pinpointing this exactly where during production the second killer was dropped, since rather than writing a complete revision, they only had time to rewrite individual scenes as they went along, which typically happened on the day they were set to be shot. So anyway, let's get into the film. It opens up with Cotton Weary stuck in LA traffic, where he gets called from the sexy-sounding mystery woman, whose voice then changes to an even sexier-sounding Ghostface. As always, by the steadfast Roger L. Jackson. I wish I could say that this was Angelina calling, but the concept of the multi-voice modulator was always written in the story from the outset in the initial opening scene, which was filmed but unused. Cotton arrived home to find his apartment completely empty. He then hears a shower turn. So Cotton arrives home to find his apartment completely empty. He then hears the shower turned on, and after investigating the noise, he receives a phone call from the killer disguising himself in the voice of Christine, who tells him that she's waiting for him at the cafe down the street. He tells her to call the police and then hangs up, continues searching the apartment. A few moments later, the killer calls back, still using Christine's voice, letting him know that she's on her way home, despite his protest for her to stay away while he's having this conversation. Someone in the apartment turns on the stereo to remind us of this movie's promotional soundtrack. As Cotton goes to turn off the music, the killer on the phone, as Christine tells him she's just running up the stairs, and instructs him to retrieve a baseball bat from the hall closet. As Cotton does, this Christine's lifeless body falls out onto him, and Ghostface runs in through the main entrance, stabbing Cotton to death. This scene was then changed to appear closer to the version we got in the finished film, the only difference being Cotton tries to escape out of the skylight in his office. Both of these versions can be found on the DVD. However, the final version was reshot well after the principal filming was completed, so it was consistent with the idea of Roman being the only killer, and we can see that here in the finished version of the scene that Roman was the one who killed both Christine and Cotton. But in the original scene that they shot, it seemed though Angelina was already inside the apartment when Cotton arrived. He possibly killed Christine and hid her body and lured Cotton around by creating distractions as he talked on the phone with Roman, who then would have ran up the stairwell and killed him, since Christine's death in the version was off screen. There's no way of knowing for sure whether it's Roman or Angelina who killed her, but as far as Cotton's kill concerned, it seems though the killer who was on the phone was the one who did the deed. If we look back at my breakdowns for the first two movies, the evidence suggests that the phone calls were always made by the killer, who was more so the mastermind of the operation, with Billy being the caller in Scream 1 and Mrs. Loomis being the caller in Scream 2. There was one instance where Stu called Sydney at Tatum's house while Billy was in jail, but that aside, I'm going to apply this same logic here and say that Roman still would have been the one making the calls throughout the movie, had Angelina still been his partner. This would then indicate to us that Romans was always intended to be the one who murdered Cotton in every version of the scene. Moving ahead to Sarah Darling's murder, there is a lot more room for interpretation here thanks to an extended version of the scene, which sees her arriving at the Sunrise Studios lot and going through security. In the finished film, we do hear a strange noise after she gets out of the car, at which point she looks back before continuing on up the stairs. In the extended scene, this was then followed by the PVO shot of the killer watching her as she entered the state production offices. Based on how the scene goes down, if there was two killers involved at this point in filming, I would imagine that Roman once would have been the one who made the phone call. We know that the killer calls Sarah Darling's in Roman's real voice before he changes it to his traditional Ghostface voice. But it would make sense if for Roman to be the caller here, and he obviously wouldn't need to emulate his own voice with any device if you consider the killer PVO shot from the rooftop of the adjacent building. This might suggest that Roman acted as a lookout to know when Sarah would arrive and know exactly when to call her, as well as see if anyone else was coming or going from the office. As we can see, was the case with several other characters, so while the finished film suggests Roman was probably hiding and making a phone call from the props room, we can see in the original edit that one killer would have been outside while the second killer was already camped out inside. And if Roman was the one making the calls from outside of the building, the Ghostface hiding in the props room, who ends up killing Sarah, would therefore have to be Angelina. Now, what is the probably biggest plot hole in this entire movie comes next, and that is of course a scene in which the killer finally calls Sydney's home. The reason why this scene makes absolutely no sense whatsoever is because for the first third of the movie, Roman has no idea where Sydney is or how to draw her out, and this is a huge of why Sydney is hiding in isolation in the first place, and why even Detective Kincaid isn't able to track her down. So it makes very little sense that all of a sudden Roman has now access to her phone number and is able to call her. I know this is a throwaway line later on because about him possibly being able to monitor the calls from a scanner, but then why go through all trouble of asking Cotton where Sydney was if he could have gotten her number this whole time? You can cut out the first 30 minutes of the movie easy, but this wouldn't be a proper video if we didn't overanalyze the shit out of it. So we're going to do our best to patch up the plot hole by looking at the scene which directly follows this one at the course is the Stab 3 rap party at Jennifer's bungalow, which seems to be occurring at the same time or shortly thereafter from when Roman calls Sydney. Now, thanks to some expositional dialogue from Gale, we learn that Roman was cleared and released from the police, so he wouldn't have been in custody for long, making it entirely plausible for him to be able to call Sydney. We know the only person that has Sydney's phone number is Dewey, but other than that, Jennifer and Detective Kincaid, there's no point in this movie where we can see any other characters use his cell phone. However, with Dewey living on Jennifer's property and Angelina being present at the house at the same time, we can grasp at straws here and conjecture that at some point during the party, she may have had an opportunity to get Dewey's phone, find Sid's number and send it to Roman. It is a bit of a stretch by judging the timeline of that night. It does offer the most logical explanation to fill in this gap with everything that goes down. Next I do find one that suspended disbelief quite a bit in order to buy the fact that Roman was able to get so much done in this scene, as there was a lot of lucky coincidences. I mean, he killed the bodyguard, turns on the gas stove in the kitchen remotely, script pages to Jennifer's fax machine from his phone. I don't even know how that technology works today, let alone in the year 2000. Then he has everything lined up perfectly, only to be in the exact spot where Gail ends up landing after her fall, and he's able to do there completely undetected by the 6 people who were present at the house. Now if we rewind and look at the same scenario over again, but through the lens of Angelina being the second killer, it is still a lot of lucky coincidences, but it does make this a little more feasible. Continuing with the logic of Roman being the primary caller, we can place him in Dewey's trailer where he waits for Stone to come around during his perimeter check. When Stone gets close enough, Roman calls him using Dewey's voice and attacks him once he's inside the close confines of the mobile home. Meanwhile, Angelina, who's shown to be coming and going multiple times throughout the scene, likely would have been the one to turn on the gas stove in the kitchen. She wouldn't need to change in the Ghostface costume to do this, because she's invited, because she's a party guest and would be able to move around the house inconspicuously. Whereas Roman would have likely been spotted if he attempted to do this, with or without the costume. With Roman have dispatched the bodyguard outside, he now cuts the power to the house and faxes the script to Jennifer's machine before making his way down the cannon. Hold on. The power was out, but the fax machine still worked. I'm seriously trying with this movie, since I would have been a team effort for both Roman and Angelina. I'm going to credit both of them with Tom's murder, since Angelina set the trap up and Roman offered the bait. It should be noted here that Angelina does have a foresight to know to break away from the rest of the group before the explosion, and has likely gotten far away from the blast radius that we don't see her anywhere near the others. As they're running away from the flying debris and they're falling down the hill, this hints to us that there could have been a premeditation on her part. Meanwhile, Roman has been waiting at the side of the road and jumps out at Gale before getting shot at by Dewey and making a quick getaway. Angelina, who likely walked down the hill safely from a far distance, emerges on the road and evades Dewey's questions of how she got all the way over there by feigning hysteria over Tom's death. The next time we see Ghostface is when Sid visits the Woodsboro set. Originally, this set was supposed to be used for the climax of the film before it was changed to the mansion, and this scene instead just involved Sidney getting attacked by both of the Ghostface killers in the washroom. And when I say both Ghostface killers, I mean they didn't even try to hide the fact that there was 2 killers, as they both appeared on screen together at the same time. However, the scene was rewritten to have Sidney to visit the actual set and move the climax to the mansion. I'm pretty sure they were still working under the assumption that there would be 2 killers, because this is the only point in the movie where it's so obvious that there's more than one killer. The only way to justify this is that Roman working alone is to accept Randy's rules of the trilogy to be true, meaning Roman really is superhuman and does possess those Jason Voorhees teleportation powers. But because this is a Scream movie and is rooted in real life, there is no natural way he could have moved around like this, even if he knew that stab through set like the back of his hand. So what I imagine happens here is after Sidney exchanges with Angelina in the washroom, she lures Sidney out onto the set. Once Sid gets there, Angelina, now as Ghostface, and the Ghostface costume, follows her into the house and stands off by the side of the bedroom door, where Sidney has jammed shut and Angelina tests the door. Sidney backs into the window where Roman jumps up and grabbing her and pulling her through. During the scruffle, Angelina hides in the closet by the front door, so when Sidney enters the house again, she is able to surprise attack her as she lunges out and chases her upstairs, Schumacher style, where Sidney is able to slow her down using fake plants and production equipment. She then pulls Angelina through the fake door, throwing her down onto the bed at this point. Angelina runs off while Roman has made his way into the crime scene bedroom and uses Maureen's voice to summon Sydney. He then raises up with the bloody sheet over the top of him and frightens Sydney right out of the window, taking off before anyone realizes what's happening. Angelina, who's now had enough time to regroup with the others, conveniently shows up and continues to play the sweet young and Ennui, I can't even say the word, act in order to avoid suspicion on her part. We finally see Roman again at Milton's office, talking about his career. I honestly don't know why he is in this scene, other than the fact that this movie needed to remind us that he's still a character in it. But I imagine he would probably be listening through the door after he left the room, so he can hear how much Gail, Dewey, and Jennifer knew, and presumably waited around for Milton to leave his office so he could kidnap him and take him to the mansion. By the time everyone arrives at the party, Roman and Angelina are the most eager to break up the group as Roman goes off exploring with Jennifer while Angelina goes off with Tyson. If the idea still was that there was two killers, this suggests that they were both pulling a disappearing act so they could re-emerge as both their Ghostface alter egos, with Angelina eluding Tyson through the secret passageway, and Roman faking his death for the others to find him. But with Angelina then revealing to us that she did ultimately get the role of Sidney Prescott by sleeping with Milton, it is pretty much clears her name and cements her fate, as this is a moment where she checks out of the movie. There will be some of you who know are convinced that Angelina was still working with Roman despite the revelation never being made apparent on screen. And honestly, I can't fault you for that. Patrick Lucia even says in the audio commentary that Angelina's body was mysteriously pulled away to leave us wondering what happened to her. And if you really wanted to get conspiracy theory here, the Ultimate Scream Collection DVD booklet has a list of all deaths from each movie in the trilogy, and for some reason Emily Mortimer is suspiciously not included as a part of the R.I.P. Scream 3 cast list. There's no telling what Angelina would have taken off to after this, but there is a bizarro Scream universe out there in which Angelina was a Ghostface, not only got away with it, but completely undetected. There we go. So yeah, you thought there was two killers, one killer, which was Roman. On the original script, there was two killers, which was Angelina Tyler and Roman Bridger. So there you go. I just drilled that in your mind. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to my channel. It'll be a big help. Thank you for watching. Take care. Peace.